And the magic machine tells me that I'm live. And the magic machine tells me that I'm live as I take. Listen, solo cups notwithstanding, this is water. As I say hello to Jilly Beans, and I note the time is 6 o'clock. Inside jokes and commentary. It is 6 o'clock, and if it goes a minute above after 7, I don't want to hear crap, Jilly. And I love you. And welcome to the live chat, and thank you for your participation in the live chat. And gold medal on today. New stuff, classic fighting fantasy, Troika, swords and wizardry, and more. The title of today's show is born out of lack of preparedness and indecision. I was on the cusp of not really knowing which direction I was going to go in, kind of really on the brink of kind of three routes. And I say hello to Jen Q, and a silver medal onto Jen Q for participation in the live chat. And I say hello to Bobby McBobbin. We say hello to Jen Q, silver medal onto Jen Q for a live chat participation, and Bobby McBobbin, bronze medal onto thee for live chat participation. There you go. TGIF says Jilly Beans. Bobby McBobbin, I don't know if if it's important, for what it's worth, but I got to tell you, gender stereotypes be damned. I got Chili and Jen, in the live chat. I got to tell you, I got to be, I'm a dynamic dude. You got to love me. And Bobby, we love thee. We love thee. Thank you. Thank you for being here. I was going in different directions, and I had a couple of things that I was cooking, and and I also had I had last night I was on my main channel, and it was a wild show. It was a fun show, but it was crazy. I ended up taking the live stream down, not because I was particularly embarrassed by my performance or my live stream, but it was just the live chat got, cuckoo, and people were saying, nutty things. I don't know if people were being outrageous for the sake of outrageousness, or they were being sarcastic and it just wasn't trans, but just for whatever reason, or if people were if it was English as a second language, for whatever reason, over the course of the 2-hour stream, at the end, I said to myself, it's been up for however many hours, and if you saw it, you saw it. Congratulations. And if you missed it, hey, baby, it's one of those things. So the fog of war, just in the afterglow or the after effects of just, I just didn't know what I was going to do with the many ideas that I had percolating for the RPG channel, though I had too many ideas not to do nothing. So I knew I was going to do something. I knew I had too many things to talk about to not have RPG content, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to have. I had been reading this small RPG, Wandering Jewel Moons. The author is credited as E.A. Bison on Amazon, where I picked up the product, on itch.io, which is a web kind of I closed it. Itch.io. It's itch.io. It's like kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like the kind of the Etsy.com of RPG content creators, self-published RPG content creators. but on there they have I was smart enough to open up the proper windows, and then I was dumb enough to close all of these things. Let me do the proper things again for Wandering Jewel Moons. I got this. Okay, resume your journey. There we go. Okay. Okay. There's mine. Okay, he's credited as EA Bison on Amazon, where I picked this up for a small price of $7.50. Says it's inspired by the Black Hack, which was one of these OSR old school revival or old school revolution or renaissance games, going back to the old school, the first edition D&D, early rule sets for inspiration, simple rules. But unlike many games inspired by the Black Hack and similar games, Wandering Jewel Moons is not strictly a kind of Dungeons and Dragons, elves, wizards, high fantasy, Tolkien-esque, um, medieval swords and sorcery kind of thing. It's a unique world, and so I was kind of, based on our time that we had been spending with Troika, the kind of Troika Final Fantasy fighting fantasy hybrid we were working in. It seemed like a good thing to introduce us to, because it was a different take on things, and it similarly has a kind of bizarro kind of world. So I thought, I'd been looking at that and thought, I was almost there thinking that we were going to do kind of like a full review of this Wandering Jewel Moons. So I was like, basically, 7/8 of the way of, having read, all the way through the book, and, I was kind of there, but I was like, I'm not quite sure of whether or not I was ready to kind of, shift directions from fighting fantasy and Troika and doing all that to do a whole new thing. And like I said, I spent most of today, doing today's work, and kind of not even really kind of clear on what I was going to do, because I was still conflicted about yesterday's stream. And there were other things, like I said, I was conflicted because, as in the title, we have Swords and Wizardry. So there's this thing, Swords and Wizardry. It's got many iterations. I got an iteration here, Swords and Wizardry Continual Light. We talked about the Black Hack as one of these OSR games. Swords and Wizardry is one of the original OSR old school revival games. This is like a version of it. And this is a game, OSR, Swords and Wizardry Continual Light, is a burn down of first edition D&D, because Swords and Wizardry itself is basically a burn down of white box D&D, of the first edition of D&D. And this is a burn down. It's like, this is like a cliff notes of a cliff notes of first edition D&D. So this is a version of first edition D&D that really can be read in like 20-25 minutes from cover to cover, and really kind of absorbed from cover to cover. So I was thinking about doing an analysis of that. So I was betwixt and between that. And then there were other things that had come too. Like, I finally found an affordable hard copy of Troika. I had been reading over and over again the system reference document for Troika that I was stoked. And I had been talking about this 20-year nostalgia loop from the 20-year nostalgia loop. It was the open game license and the system reference document for first edition D&D that was put out by Wizards of the Coast in 2000, basically, or 2003, 2003, that made the OSR possible. And now, like, we're on the 20-year nostalgia loop that basically is like we're experiencing that whole nostalgia loop again. Like, and like I need to preface some things. I know some people have joined the live chat. Like, I see Jonaside has joined us, so I say hello to Jonaside, and I say hello to Rugged Source as well. Welcome, folks. So we get Jonaside, you get 4th place, honorable mention, and Rugged Source, you get left out in the ring. Sin spin, baby. You know what I mean? What can I tell you? Jonaside, no medal, but honorable mention. Rugged Source, elbow cough, and you know what I mean? Elbow, fist. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Can I tell you? You know what I mean? Show up on time next time, homie. What are you gonna do? Do you know what I mean? It is what it is. Hey, Jonaside, you might not be here for long, but you showed up on time as far as I'm concerned. You know what I mean? As far as your ass is concerned, I guess. Anywho, where was I? I don't know. Cheap jokes. There you go. Anywho, Acid Death Fantasy, baby. There you go. Listen. It turned out better than your rear end at the end. Listen, anyway. And scene. Get a drink of water. I'm making myself hoarse. Mr. Hands. R.I.P. We hardly knew thee. Listen. Hey. No pun intended. Sorry, pun. This was a fist in my throat. Somewhere it goes. Anywho. Nenyuhu. Listen, I can say that joke because I'm a beverage. Let's play basketball with Kanye West. Now I hang out in a mental institution. Don't come near me. I think I'm with Yoo-hoo. If you come too close to me, I'm scared you're going to spill me. No, wait. That's not how the story goes. Acid Death Fantasy. I was reading a book in 1975 in the rain while I was playing Troika. Now I hang out in a mental institution. Don't get too close to me because I think I'm a pair of dice, and I'm scared if you get too close to me, you're going to throw me. Okay. Listen, there's someone out there that gets like all the jokes. Like down the line. They're just sitting there in their lounge chair out there like in like San Mateo, like just like down the line, just like every Friday night, they're just like dying. They're just like can't get enough. They're just living for it. Loving every minute of it. You know what I mean? No one understands. Jesus, man alive. Write me a letter. Tell me what's going on with you. Anyway, the other thing that's going on, I'm all my ever loving quest to go all in on. This has been happening in the background for a while. We're still going all in on 4E for no reason. It's purely political. It's purely political. Two things. Number one, all I needed to hear was that it was the edition that destroyed the franchise. Perfect. Yes. Say no more. That it was basically like a video game. Okay. Perfect. Selling point number two. You got me. Ruin things. All right. You ruined something. I love you already. It's like a video game. Perfect. And everybody hates you. Three. You're the trifecta. So then that's all I needed to know. So I've got the Forgotten Realms Player's Guide came as well. So we got things to discuss. So I found also, so I found a good version of Troika that was not unaffordable as well. So I'm all over the place. And we got more fighting fantasy books as well. Classic fighting fantasy books, including the original RPG version. We're taking it old school. This is not the game books. This is when they first were taking it out to be like a role-playing game. First published 1984, reprinted 1984. So this was where we were going when we were talking about it was in 2003 that a company called Wizard took over the publishing of Fighting Fantasy, bringing that 80s franchise back from the dead. And it was in 2000, circa 2000, between 2000 and 2003, that Wizards of the Coast acquired a different Wizards company. I don't think that Wizards is associated with this Wizards, acquired for basically a song, acquired D&D. The Wizards of the Coast, the Magic the Gathering people acquired D&D for a song because D&D went fucking bankrupt. In the late 90s. So that's basically what happened. And that how Wizards of the Coast, how Magic the Gathering people were able to acquire, I guess acquire the Dragons. I started to say this and I kind of trailed off. I am a rank amateur when it comes to the history of role-playing games. I am a fan. I am a consumer. I am a person on the internet who is discussing things that they are an aficionado and a fan of. I acquire information, about this stuff the same way that, you would. Second and third hand, oftentimes from other lunkheads on the internet who may or may not be accurate and correct with their appraisals. And I hear and learn this information, second and third hand. And then that information percolates and permeates and sits and stagnates in my brain, where I regurgitate and repeat it oftentimes in error. Like I oftentimes will get my dates like horrendously wrong. Like oftentimes I'll wake up the next day and I'll be like, what year did I say the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons came out? Oh, that was wrong. Like I get my dates like wrong all the time. And like I know for a fact that if you watch like my content, you'll hear me say, I guarantee you that I say on this channel, oh, the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons came out in 1978. The first edition of Dungeons and Dragons came out in 1977. The first edition of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons came out in 1977. The first edition of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons came out in 1978. The first edition of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons came out in 1981. I guarantee you I'm all over the place saying all sorts of different dates based on whoever the last guy I heard who sounded the most accurate, whatever fucking date they said, like that's the date that I gave. You know what I mean? Because I don't fucking know. Like, or whatever date that I last read was the most like here's the rules compendium for Dungeons and Dragons, you know, 4th edition. And here's like the history of the game. Like here's a history of the game paragraph that's written in here. And this was published in 2010. And this is written by Wizards of the Coast. So this is them. This is like Wizards of the Coast who showed up on the scene like in 2000. So what the fuck do they know? Like I'm sure there were people at Wizards of the Coast who were like, we love Dungeons and Dragons. Like I'm guarantee you. Or like they hired people after the fact. Like, you know, they certainly weren't guys because Dave Arneson. And there are plenty of people after the fact who were like, Dave Arneson didn't give a fuck after such and such a date. And like, who the fuck knows? Like Dave Arneson, like if unless you're Dave Arneson and like unless you're like Dave Arneson's brain, like you don't know like what Dave Arneson like actually gave a fuck about or like how tuned in he was or like wasn't like because there are all sorts of people who are like you didn't give a shit. Like I've been at so many meetings with people who are like, you don't give a fuck about this firm. You don't give a fuck about you didn't give, you know, you'll like say to somebody who's like out the door of a firm or like out the door of a company or out the door of a group or a band or a relationship, be like, you didn't give a fuck. Why are you upset? Why do you give a fuck about like this breakup? Why do you give a fuck about leaving the band? Why do you give a fuck about this leaving the firm? Like you didn't give a shit. Like you're getting the buyout money. Like why do you care? And you'd be like, why do I care? I founded this firm, blah, blah, blah. And, like, and then you realize, like, oh, this person cares. They really do care. Like, for all you know, like, Dave Arneson, like, really gave a fuck. Like, for all you know, up to, like, fucking 2nd edition, Dave Arneson was like, that's my fucking baby. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't fucking know. I don't know. I've been talking out my ass. Right? But all I know is that there's plenty of people who are like, who go around saying shit like, Gary Gygax thought this, thought this. Dave Arneson, after such and such a date, was like out of the picture. This person was like, and unless this person is like, I was in the room, unless even the person like if you even person like there are plenty of people like Gary Gygax's wife, like even like you know like no offense, you don't fuck you like no offense like people are like, you think you know your father? You think you know your old man? You think you know your? I don't fucking know my. I'm telling you. People always go to this talk to like the son or the daughter about like their old man or like whatever. Especially when people talk to the daughter about their father and shit. I'm like, oh, what the fuck are you talking to the daughter about the fucking father for? I don't know. Unless the daughter's like on the fucking witness stand, be like, my dad did this shit and this shit. Unless it's saying something fucking crazy about the dad, I don't want to know. Let it fucking Harpo Marx's daughter up there be like, my dad was a beautiful fucking. He did this. I'm like, oh, I don't fucking give a shit. You saying nice shit about your fucking dad? I'm like, yo, I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? Whatever. History of the game according to Wizards of the Coast. Before role playing games, before computer games, before trading card games, there were war games. Using mental. I'm sorry. Using mental miniatures. You mental miniature. Using mental miniatures. I'm sorry. Thank you. There you go. Yeah, Rugged Source. Troika has a new Kickstarter edition going. The elephant in the room. Hello, everyone. Elephant in the room. You were slow tonight. I don't know what happened to you. You're way beyond. Tisk, tisk, tisk. We had to compensate. We had to fill the whole room up with elephants. Oi. This is the history of the game as of 2010. the publishing of 4th edition, according to Wizards of the Coast. Fair use, fair use, fair use. Wink, wink, nod, nod, say no more, say no more. Before role-playing games, before computer games, before trading card games, there were war games. Games without frontiers. Sex games. Erotic games. Games with lemons. Games with spice. Games with everything nice. Boy games, girl games. Erotic games. Using metal miniatures. Sorry. Woo! Yikes. That would have been so good if I had kept it straight. If I had kept it straight using metal miniatures to simulate famous battles from history, war gamers were the original hobby gamers. In 1971, Gary Gygax created Chainmail, a set of rules that added fantastic creatures and magic into the traditional war game. In 1972, Dave Arneson approached Gygax with a new take on the subject. Let's get naked. Instead of controlling an army, each player would play a single character, a hero, an erotic hero. Instead of fighting each other, they would make love. The heroes would cooperate to defeat villains and gain rewards. Erotic rewards. This combination of rules, miniatures, cooperation, and erotic sex play created a totally new entertainment experience. And in 1974, Gygax and Arneson were wed, publishing the first set of role-playing game rules with TSR Hobbies Incorporated, the Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game. In 1977, so it's in 1974, the year before I was born. Check this out. So this is why I said, there is no fucking future and the future is over, right? 1974. You have you have Dungeons and Dragons being published. You have around the same time discrete music, and shortly thereafter, music for airports being made by Brian Eno, like the birth of ambient music, right? You have Lou Reed's Metal Machine music, essentially the birth of commercial noise music. You know what I mean? And you also have the birth of me in 1975. No offense. I'm kind of a big deal. And yeah. And in 1977, you have the birth of punk rock. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of a big deal. You know what I mean? And what do you have today? No offense. People are like, oh, it's so typical to say, oh, the music of today is bullshit and the music of yesterday was better. I'm sorry, folks. At a certain point, you're going to have to break out some objective, demarcation sticks and say, folks, there were times when we would say things like, there's a music revolution happening here. And it's been a while since we've been able to say that. Oh, I know that we like to play the faux game of acting like we still point to things and act like there's still a revolution happening here. But it's not. The birth of vaporwave is not the birth of hip-hop, is not the birth of punk rock, and we all know it. Sampling Kenny G is not an ironic move akin to the breaking of the sound barrier. It's all been done. I'm sorry. Kids, I'm sorry that it's different. We're going to have to figure out what it is, but it's different. In 1977, the rules were rewritten and repackaged into a new form with the Dungeons and Dragons basic set, and suddenly the game was on its way to becoming a phenomenon. A year later, the first edition of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons game was published in a series of hardcover books. Right, it's 1977. I don't know if that was like Mulvey Cook or like what it was or like no, because what was it? I don't know what it was with like the 77. If it was like that was like Holmes Basic or whatever. I don't know what it was with whatever was the basic set, but then the first Advanced Dungeons and Dragons book was the Monster Manual, right? Because that was the one that they could use the easiest with the box. They were all compatible, right? Throughout the 1980s, the game experienced remarkable growth. Novels, a cartoon series, computer games, the first campaign settings, Greyhawk, Forgotten Realms, and Dragonlance were released. And in 1989, the second edition of the AD&D game took the world by storm. The 1990s started out strong with the release of more campaign settings, including Ravenloft, Dark Sun, and Planescape. And as the decade, I'm sorry, I'm slowing down because I'm looking at those years. I'm looking at the year 1989. I'm sorry. Close. Dungeons Dragons Juggernaut was, but as the decade was drawing to a close, the Dungeons Dragons Juggernaut was losing steam. In 1997, check this out. In 1997, Wizards of the Coast purchased TSR and moved its creative staff to Seattle to begin work on the third edition of the game, which was a landmark success. So in 1997, they were bankrupt. Okay. 20-year nostalgia loop, dude. But check this out. 1977, the rules were rewritten. In 1997, they were acquired. But it was like 3.5 that was like the crazy one that blew up. So it's the 25-year, it's like the 20-year nostalgia loop right there. I'm telling you. In 2000, the third edition of Dungeons & Dragons was released, and it was hailed as an innovation in game mechanics. Well, look, this is them tooting their own horn now. But look, I mean, that's like it, because it's like that's like the 80s was when it was huge, and the 2000s was when it was fucking huge again. That's the bottom line. There you go. You're forgiven. I love you. Hey, all right, Chili Beans. Another important year. In 2000, the third edition of Dungeons & Dragons was released, and it was hailed as innovation game mechanics. During this period, Dungeons & Dragons reached new heights of popularity, celebrated its 30th anniversary, and published a vast collection of rulebooks, supplements, and adventures. 30th anniversary. In 2008, the Dungeons & Dragons game reached a new milestone with its latest edition, fourth. That was great. This edition builds on what has gone before, introducing and refining various game elements. Over the years, Dungeons & Dragons has grown and made its mark on popular culture. It has inspired multiple generations of gamers, writers, computer game designers, filmmakers, and more with its ability to expand and the imagination and inspire creativity. Whether you were with it from the beginning or just discovered it today, and the Dungeons & Dragons game is your key to a world of fantasy and adventure. So I was out of Dungeons and Dragons in 2008 for this period of time. So role playing games for me like occurred, in the past, and I was just basically was ensconced and made love to my old school materials. My enamorment of like the hobby had morphed really for that period of time, like had kind of been transferred to the Black Library of Warhammer 40K was where I primarily got my like RPG like hobby jollies, in the sense of like I got a lot of just more of it out of the lore. I was really into the lore of Warhammer 40K, and I had the core rule book that was issued in 2008 that I would refer to, but I didn't collect the miniatures or anything. And I just, I was, like aware of the mechanics of the game and followed like Let's Plays on like, YouTube, on occasion and stuff, but was really, primarily, more into the lore of, of the setting and the world. But as far as Dungeons and Dragons was concerned, just I was, aware that, I was into, the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons, and by 1989, when second edition had come out, I had already kind of moved on to girls. Honestly, I say this all the time. Like, like my primary experience with role playing games, my introduction to role playing games, and role playing games as a hobby of a group activity of people, dudes gathered together playing role playing games as a group activity with a game master or dungeon master, however you characterize it, and other people playing collectively, role playing, was occurred between the years of like 1984 and 1988, 9 or so, and then ended as I went on into, music and playing bass and girls. And always, paid attention, like was always into, fantasy and like, music and like, fantasy adventure and like science fiction and stuff, and like was always into the hobby, like would always like be interested and attracted into the, in the at the bookstores, like always paying attention to like what was going on in the racks and stuff, but increasingly over the years aware of the fact that things were getting further and further away from what I knew and understood. You know what I mean? So, and I would always take an interest in what was like I said, what was happening on the magazine racks, what was happening on the book racks. But come on, I would just be aware of the fact that over the years, occasionally you'd see something like, oh shit, like, like a book you'd see like a book used or something. Occasionally you'd see a role playing game book or something. You'd be able to grab a used role playing game book or something for $5 or something at a yard sale or something. But that's few and far between. But if you can catch that, you catch that. But that's few and far between. And a random book from a random system will only get you so far. Prelude stories are prelude stories. So you come to now, and my interest in this stuff is getting back into it. A lot of it is the history of what happened in these things. A lot of this stuff is the history of the history of these nostalgia loops and the history of these communities and the history of how these things evolve and change over time, and also going back and seeing how these systems actually work or don't work. And a lot of this stuff is, I gotta tell you, it's interchangeable to me. You know what I mean? It really doesn't matter to me, and especially as a guy who really doesn't have an interest in necessarily putting together a group of people to play together again, and really just is a solo player. All of this stuff, is universally applicable to me anyway. It can all work for me anyway. So, anyway. In a state of confusion, I begin. In a state of confusion, I wander. In a state of confusion, I meander amongst the books and amongst the tales. But interesting tales are there to tell. And amongst interesting tales, I meander. But I feel like I kicked over a number of stones, but a number of stones just get left kicked over. But probably a couple of these things are things that I'll end up coming back to. That'll come. We say hello to Spooky. That'll come back to when they finally get their own follow-up reviews or full reviews. Maybe these things just get introduced. I could show you the fighting fantasy books that I got. I interested in the fighting fantasy books because we started looking at Troika and discovering that the Troika rules were the fighting fantasy rules, and therefore exploring the concept that these Troika characters could go through and be played through these fighting fantasy books. And indeed, I discovered playing the Death Trap Dungeon book. I have it here in my backpack. that it is indeed possible. Though the Death Trap Dungeon is a very, very medieval setting. So I set my sights to go on to Amazon and see of the fighting fantasy books that were available. Now, look, the fighting fantasy books that are on Amazon, some of them are quite pricey, but some of them were affordable. And they have some that are in a science fiction milieu. So I'll show you some that I got. Like I said, I showed you that what I'm really interested in is getting deeper into the actual fighting fantasy book, the actual role playing game book that I understand uh, does have a kind of a game book a portion to it, even though it is the role playing game that you know, given the simplicity of the rules, that I think to expand it, I guess to justify, I guess, the book cost, um, like, or maybe just to make it work as a system, it turns into a book, which is fine by me. Primarily, I'm just interested in just having a hard copy. I hate looking at screens, so I'm primarily interested in having a hard copy version of the fighting fantasy rules. And actually, I found this copy was actually, it made more sense to acquire this copy than it made to acquire the copy of um, any other copy of Fighting Fantasy. So there you go. Then I have Space Assassin. And what I wanted to do with acquiring the science fiction books is Troika obviously is more of a science fantasy esque setting. So get out of the Death Trap Dungeon, maybe Space Assassin will be more conducive, to Troika esque exploits. Part story, part game. This is a book with a difference, one in which you become the hero. Looming above your home planet in the vast hulk of the starship Vandervecken, aboard the crazed scientist Cyrus, no relation, is planning to unleash a gruesome experiment upon your world, one which would destroy all life as it is known. What about unknown? Leaving only hideous mutations in its wake. You are an assassin, and your mission is to stop him before it is too late. Before? What about after? 2 dice, a pencil, and an eraser are all you need to make your journey. You decide which route to follow, which dangers to risk, and which monsters to fight. There you go. Love it. This is year. Written by Andrew Chapman, 1985. It's a very good year. I have the sequel to. I acquired the sequel to Death Trap Dungeon, Trial of Champions, which is considered the not good one, universally panned online. Trial of Champions. I also got the second sorcery book. This is the where Steve Jackson introduced the magic system to the fighting fantasy book series in the sorcery series. This, of course, is the reissue books this book was copyright 1984, reissued this edition in 2003. 20-year nostalgia loop. Say no more, say no more. We also have the Rings of Kether in excellent condition. I say pristine condition. First published 1985. I have a 1987 reprint here. The Rings of Kether. And then I also have Rebel Planet. So we'll see how those go. This one is also 1985. So you see, like 1985 was like the big year, and then you see they all start to get reissued in 2003. So that's the nostalgia loop right there. And here we are talking about it again in 2022. We have Troika Numinous Edition right here. So we can ask our copyright question again that we posed last time. It's copyright 2015, 2018, right? So there it is. The 20-year nostalgia loop would bring that to 1995. The 40-year nostalgia loop brings it to 1975. It's copyright 2015 to 2018, right? So it was actually came out in 2018. So they started work in 2015, but it was actually published in 2018, right? 2015 to 2018. It was actually published in 2018, right? It was actually published in 2018. It actually came out in the wild in 2018. They started it in 2015. So they got the yearning to do it in 1975. It actually came out in 1978. What actually came out in 1978? First edition of Dungeons and Dragons, right? I'm sorry, 1977 was first edition of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. See how it works? Do you see how it works? I'm sorry, it's Final Fantasy, so they're a little bit off. Mixed metaphors, but you kind of see how it works. But if we go to 2018 for their year of birth for Troika, considering that they're using the Fighting Fantasy rules, it's like 1970. It's like it fudges a little, right? So it's basically 2020. It's basically 1980. But that's part of the problem is Troika is early. They should be coming out 2 years from now. I think that's the problem is that they might be early. Theoretically, they might be early, or they might be late. Who knows? What do I know? But the question we have to ask ourselves is this. First of all, the 20-year, 30-year nostalgia loop thing might just be horse feathers. It might just be bunko. It just might be a theory that makes sense. It kind of seems like it could work. But it's it's theoretical. It's empirical observation. We haven't run it through a scientific analysis. We always fudge the numbers. We move the number over here, we move the number here. It's 1978, but if we move it, it's Nostradamus. You know what I mean? We count our wins, we ignore the losses, and we call it a day. And what are we doing, right? Also, bear in mind that they are they are working off of Fighting Fantasy, and Fighting Fantasy was big in Great Britain. Fighting fantasy was not huge over here. When I started going into the solo RPG, rabbit hole, and I started hearing about these fighting fantasy books, I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, there was a choose your own adventure series that was half choose your own adventure and half role playing game book. What? What? In 1984, you're telling me that Scholastic Magazine was selling, along with the choose your own adventure books, a book series that would have allowed me to essentially in school have played a role-playing game where I am the fucking fighting fantasy beastmaster dude rolling around the dungeon, rolling dice, fighting the fucking skeleton warrior. You're fucking telling me that shit was going down while I was on fucking planet Earth and I was not aware of that shit? Are you fucking kidding me? It was like a fucking Mandela effect of the highest fucking order. Bobby McBobbin hooked on different mahjong games right now. 2 Tours of Mars. You listen, you know what I mean? Only the good die on Mars. Watch out. There you go. They get you. Watch out. Watch out for Amazon. Watch out for the Amazons in Amazon. They'll get you. Holy crap. Listen. I was like, are you fucking shitting me? I couldn't believe it. I was like, you gotta be kidding me, honey. I was like, what? You gotta be kidding me. So when we talk about Troika, working, the nostalgia loop, they're working the nostalgia loop for, basically they talk about like, oh, if America sneezes, the world gets a cold. They don't say that shit about, Great Britain. You know what I mean? It's like, like being an Anglophile in the United States is an acquired taste. You know what I mean? That's like saying, being a, crazy, wackadoo BBC loving Doctor Who fan is something that, conceited, people with their nose up in the air trying to show off that they're, big, douchey, what the fuck, do. You know what I mean? It's like, so, you know what I mean? If you want to, do that, do that, but, you might be not that making yourself be mass appeal is the name of the game. But look, it is what it is. So where are these guys from too? Are they from the UK? Anyway, all I know is this is that one of the things that I love is that also speaking about this 20-year nostalgia loop is that we know this, that, oh, and remember this, that because, okay, I don't know, I'm not the historian, but I think that I know enough to know this. Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson left or were forced out prior to TSR going bankrupt. But because TSR went bankrupt, Wizards of the Coast were able to buy the intellectual property of Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax, aka all of Dungeons and Dragons, right? So in 2000, Wizards of the Coast, made the unilateral decision, basically, I guess, without Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, to put out the system reference document for Dungeons and Dragons, so that people could make that. I've talked about all the time, the open game license and the SRD, so that people could make the third party licensed, stuff. And they did it so people could make the third-party license stuff. But what ended up happening was that people used that open game license so that they could make the Osric, and that people could make Swords and Wizardry, and people could make the retro clone stuff, and which is great. But that happened, all that stuff happened because of that open game license, which happened in 2000. And the Troika model and the Morkborg model, which is the Troika model, is that open game license model. So that's the 20-year nostalgia loop right there too. Ain't that a beautiful thing? I don't know. I think it's cool. So general thoughts and ideas. General thoughts and ideas about gaming, I guess, and the nostalgia loop and how it all works around. I often struggle. I don't know how to well, it's the battle between trying to figure out so there's structured content on YouTube. There's structured RPG gaming content on YouTube, right? Here's the review of the Morkborg supplement. Here's the review of Troika Numinous Edition. Here's the playthrough of Fighting Fantasy Game Book number 12, Space Assassin, whatever. And the problem that I think that ends up that I started noticing, with me is that so the struggle is like you want to. I feel like there's part of me that feels like I want to, like I'm supposed to want to normalize towards that content ideal. But then I feel as though, well, if you do that, then all you end up doing is more of the same. And then I feel like, in addition to being just kind of neutered and just doing more of the same, which is just doesn't do anything for anybody, I feel like that's just kind of lousing up the community, because I feel like all that ends up doing to like role playing game content in general, I feel like that's part of the reason like role playing game content suffers, is that it just ends up normalizing, just turning it into a consumer avenue. Like I feel like the normalization, like the normal vector of this lane is to have it be, this is a consumer hobby. Let me tell you about this awesome product and why you should buy this product. Do you know what I mean? And I think that that's like not necessarily, the grooviest thing. So it's like I would think that what I would hope is happening is that as much as me is seeping in the edges as possible. And the problem is that YouTube is not a space that's conducive to figuring out how to get that through the pipeline, because it wants you to be a titled product. It wants the video to be, this is a Troika review. It wants you to be, a thumbnail. It wants you to be, this is a video about this. It wants you to be, I'm, product 65934 that does XY fix 83, this does that. It wants you to be, fit for purpose. It doesn't want you to be, squishy. It doesn't want you to be, nebulous. And in a way, I don't blame it because I mean, how could you blame? I mean, like Nebulous is hard to work with. Like, it's hard to say to the system, like, for fuck's sake, like, why are you having a hard time recommending an hour of random meandering to people? Like, why are you having a hard time finding my audience? Algorithm, hop to it. You're ones and zeros. You should be excelling at this shit. And, why? I have no idea. Here's Rogue Status. CW, as I live and breathe. Good to see you, pal. Good to see you too. It's good to see you too, Rogue Status. Good to see you too. Okay. So look, all I can tell you is this. At the end of the day, you know what I mean? I remain. And I remain with you. Oh, where am I? Here we go. Let's see. I've been here with you for an hour. So look, the thing is this also, it's like, if there's anything that people want to give back to me or if there's any feedback that people have for me, I will feedback. Other than that, let me do this. I'm trying to think. So, speaking about, I'd mentioned Swords and Wizardry Continuous Light, and I'd mentioned the OSR. Here is White Box, which is another one of these OSR RPG games. I've had White Box for a while. It says compatible with Swords and Wizardry White Box by Matt Finch and Marv Brigg. Matt Finch is a legendary person in this OSR scene because Matt Finch, compiled, I think, the original Osric, which is like the old school reference, something, whatever. But that built off that original, like, here it is, like this. Here we go. Let me show you. It's got this. This thing has it. Here it is. Here's the open game license version 1.0. The following text is the property of Wizards of the Coast Incorporated and is copyright 2000 Wizards of the Coast Incorporated. Definition. Here we go. The license. Open game content. Here you go. Copyright notice. You got to print this on each one of these. Here you go. System reference document. Copyright 2000 2003. Swords and Wizardry Core Rules. Copyright 2008. Matthew J. Finch. Swords and Wizardry White Box Rules. There you go. 2008, 2011. There you go. So the original White Box, 1974 D&D. Matt Finch redid them redid the rules from the 1974 original White Box D&D using the content from the system reference document printed by Wizards of the Coast. You see what he did? He took the open game license he took the system reference document, he took the free content that Wizards of the Coast made open source in 2000. Because that's what they did. They took the Wizards of the Coast, basically took the original Dungeons and Dragons material and said, okay, it's basically open source, but you got to credit us and print the open game license on your material. And you can't use the IP stuff. You can't use like Eye of the Beholder. You can't use the name stuff. You can't use like the proper pronouns, like the proper nouns and stuff, like the Eye of the Beholder stuff, the names, but you can use like the spell contents and stuff. So whatever. So the dude took the data from the system reference document and took the original rules from the 1974 White Box and recreated them as the game Swords and Wizardry. What is this? What did he do? Swords and Wizardry. Oh, so Swords and Wizardry white box. So then this other guy says, oh, then this other guy, Charlie, what's this other guy's name? Charlie Mason says, oh, when I discovered the OSR, I enjoyed every game I read, but one stood out from the rest as the most versatile game, Swords and Wizardry White Box. That was the game written by Matt Finch. Its conciseness was a breath of fresh air after the voluminous and verbose trend in modern fantasy role-playing games. But it had one problem. Its presentation left a lot to be desired. I waited for years to see an update, but it never happened. Finally, one day, I'd waited long enough. If no one else was going to update it, then I would do it myself. I had no experience in publishing, and I had a decent understanding of MS Word. Whiteback's fantastic medieval adventure game was born. So basically, this guy, Charlie Mason, took what Matt Finch did. Matt Finch took what Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson did and rewrote it as Sword and Wizardry White Box. This guy said, oh, you did a good job, Matt Finch, but not quite good enough, and said, okay, and wrote another version of it called White Box Fantastic Medieval Adventure Game. This other guy said, oh, Matt Finch, you did a good job too, but I'm going to do you one better and make it even simpler, and did this game called Sword and Wizardry Continual Light. This is what you see, which is so crazy in the OSR, but what's so beautiful is all these people taking past work and using this open source information and this open source data and reworking it and changing it and tweaking it and working it and giving credit to the people that came before them. But I don't know, it's really, really kind of cool, and it's really kind of communal. But it's really interesting. But at a certain point, we get to the point to know that a lot of the times it gets really incestual. And a lot of the times it gets really funny because a lot of the times people will be talking about, oh, what's better, this version of the game or this version of the game. And a lot of the times I'll look at different versions of the game, especially when it comes to like these self-published, like it's a joke. Like everyone involved in the OSR makes their own version of the game. Like some of these versions of the game, it's like they're identical. You know what I mean? It's like it's the same fucking game. But we'll get into these different versions of the game. The last thing I'm going to do is this. Oh, and I have a version. Here's another thing that someone did. Someone took Sword and Wizardry, the Sword and Wizardry game from the original Sword and Wizardry from Matt Finch, and they did a world off of it. Welcome to the called Midgard. The flame of heroes must light a dark world. Welcome to the world of dark roads and deep magic, where you can match wits with Baba Yaga, set sail for uncharted islands with Minotaur corsairs, and face the fury of the giants in the icy north. The Midgard Swords and Wizardry Guidebook is everything you need to create a Swords and Wizardry character for an old-school Midgard campaign, including an overview of Midgard's regions, from the bustling crossroads to the doom-haunted Northlands and magic-warped wasted West. 5 new PC races: Dragonkin, Gearforged, Kobolds, Minotaur, Ravenfolk. Dozens of new monsters, including Void Dragons, Eye Golems, Lich Hounds, Trollkin. All the secrets of Midgardian ley lines magic. A tome's worth of new spells for magic users, clerics, and druids, including Claws of Darkness, Armored Heart, Ley Energy Bolts, Sphere of Order, Snowblind Stare, and many more. The shadow roads are opened, and the world's serpent steers in sleep. Begin your journey. This is from Kobold Press. They've got a good reputation. This is print on demand. So, yeah, more Swords and Wizardry stuff. And the last thing I'm going to show you guys, I showed you the last time we did one of these kind of mixed bag shows, I showed you a funny thing at the end. We did the, what did we have last time? I showed you the reboot RPG. Well, we got Jonocide. I hope Jonocide had to leave early. Hopefully Jonocide had to leave early. It's terrible that if Jonocide had to leave early, it's a shame because The squared circle. This is just for genocide. When I saw this, I knew, I knew I had to pick it up. The squared circle. The wrestling RPG. I don't know how to think about the concept of role playing a professional wrestling match. The squared circle wrestling RPG. Create a wrestler and lead them to the very pinnacle of the wrestling industry, winning titles and engaging in feuds along the way. Will you become a legend? Or maybe running a wrestling promotion is more your style. Create and run your own promotion and face off against your friends to see who has the skill to make it and who doesn't. Features over 200 fully detailed moves to choose from, 38 match types to choose from, over 50 NPC wrestlers to use in your games. Create your own wrestling storylines, managers and valets. 2 gameplay types: wrestler, career, and promotion manager. Play alone or with friends. Play alone or with friends. That's a solo mode. 180 pages. There's a solo mode. Solo mode. If there's a solo mode, forget it. Copyright 2007. Daydreamer Interactive. Here we go. Here we go. What is this? Glossary of terms: wrestler creation, attributes, wrestler classes, brawler, all arounder, technical, high flyer, powerhouse, skills, rounding out, match types: single match, tag team match, 6-man tag team match, hardcore singles match, hardcore 2-man match, hardcore 6-man team, hardcore 6-man team, singles ladder match, 2-man team ladder match, 3-man team ladder match, blindfold singles match, blindfold 2-man team match, blindfold 3-man team match, flag singles match, flag 2-man team match, flag 3-man team match, 2 versus 1 handicap match, 3 versus 1 handicap match, 3 versus 2 handicap match, Inferno singles match, Iron Man singles match, singles lumberjack match, scaffold singles match, 2 out of 3 singles match, first blood singles match, last man standing singles match, table singles match, table tag set match, classic singles cage match, classic 4-man classic 4-man cage match, modern singles cage match, modern 4-man cage match, 3-way match, 4-way match, triangle match, 4 corners match, 3-way dance, 4-way dance, battle royale, money and I almost started. I kept on thinking like it was moves. Money and spending it, managers and valets, angles and feuds, merchandising, match mechanics, combos, critical hits and misses, 0 health points, lift moves, high spots, team-based wrestlings, massive wrestlers, reversals, pinfalls, submission holds, heat points, injury points, referee warnings, ringside action, alignment points, finishers, overness, multiple wrestler fights, weapons, match after match, experience, example of play, game master section, setting up the game, simulating NPC matches, wrestler contracts, running the game, prestige, booking a card, monthly payroll, television contracts and creating new moves, wrestling terminology. Holy shit, I'm not going to keep on. I'm just looking for the solo mode. Oh, this is listening to the guys. Move list. What happened to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? 6 attributes: strength, intelligence, endurance, charisma, agility, and speed. There you go. Figured out over time. Anyway, folks, I love you. Oh, yeah. Where's the Osho's in Tarot? Oh, yeah. Spooky. Why is Ra? Many people come asking a question. Oh, yeah. Oh, glasses. Let's make choices. We're spooky. Ask me a very important question. Spooky. The cream is trying to rise to the top. We're setting you up, sister, and you're not here. What's going on? You're like me and Gene Okerland, never there in the pinch. Why is Ra? Projections! Oh, yeah. 7 of water. Projections. Elizabeth. Hurt my throat. I gotta be careful because I tried to do Gene Autry. Man, they were difficult. But I'm a closer. Persistent. You ever see Barbarian? Good movie. It's crushed when I found out it was a dude in the suit. Oh, man. I think that was a guy? Oh, now I feel weird. Spoiler. You see the credits. Okay. 7 of 1. So the Osho Zen Tarot is, some people don't like it. It has an unusual take on many of the cards. I like it for that reason, because it can give a different take on the cards, a different view of them. And this is one of those takes. 7 of Cups. Here it's just it's 7 of water. Here it's presented as projections. It's a different take. 7 of Cups in a traditional Rider-Waite deck, if I'm not mistaken, is the image of the figure presented with too many options, beguiling options, options of mystical, dreamy flavors, and too many of them spoiled by too many mystical, beguiling choices. To present them here as projections can give us the same energy, but in a different focus. By presenting it here in the focus of two people looking at each other, but not looking at each other. and instead seen some other choice, but not quite the thing itself. What I will do here is I'm going to reach through the Osho Zen Tarot card and just pluck out the Seven of Cups and show you the image of the original traditional card as I've told you about and described it. Because I think it's the more apt one for what we've seen tonight. Too many choices, right? It's literally what I described at the beginning of our show. I said, this is what today's show is about. I said, today's show came about and today's title came about because I've got too many things. I said, I had yesterday's show was hanging over my head and it was a bit of a shadow and, I had to take it down and blah, blah, blah. And, and I've got this and I had this and I didn't know if I was going to cover this or I was going to cover the other thing. And I've got this. It's literally, I had too many choices. I'm a funny tarot card reader in the sense that, well, duh. It's easier to tell the future in reverse. You know what I mean? But I take more solace in to me, it's much more interesting to get the, how do you like that confirmation of the card and how interesting it works with what we've seen than to, test the card and be like, oh my God, it came true. You know what I mean? Because just give me a little magic to see me through the world. Right? Because there's too many choices. Get us through December. And get us through. We'll make it through. We'll be fine. These are problems to have. Anyway, folks, it's beguiling, but it beguiles, and these are problems to have. We'll make it through. We'll be fine. I love you. I love you. I love you. If nobody told you they loved you today, somebody just did. That somebody is CW Janter. If nobody told you they loved you today, there you go. Thank you, Julie. Thank you. Rogue status. Did I miss anybody? There you go. We'll see you later. There you go. If you're not subscribed and you think you might want to, subscribe. If you like the video, if you could like it, we also practice Grateful Dead rules here, which means this. If you like any portion of this video, but you think the video is a little lengthy and you think a small portion of it would do a little bit better and you think it would use with a judicious clip, give it a clip. The YouTube allows you to do the clip. Do the clip if you'd like to do the clip. Do the clip. Clip away. Clip if you want to clip. You could clip if you want to. Clip your friends behind. Just if you clip, let me know you clipped. Okay? Clip. I love you. I really do. I can't get enough of you. Okay? I'll talk to you later. Have a good one. Catch you on the next one. Take a look in the description box below. There's other things. There's other links. Follow me on all the things. And do the things. Until next time.